Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about what CheckView is and why it's a game changer for anyone that has a WordPress site. If you've ever clicked that big WordPress button, crossed your fingers, hope that your site didn't break, especially with WooCommerce checkout or WordPress forms, you're definitely not alone, and that's why we built CheckView. CheckView is the first automated testing platform built specifically for WordPress that runs real tests in real browsers on a routine basis to make sure your forms and other business functions are working properly. If it does find an issue, it will alert you right away so you can go and fix those issues before your customers report them, making sure that you're not losing sales or damaging your reputation. Of course, if it doesn't find issues, it scrubs that data clean so that you and your customers don't even know it's running in the background. Whether you're an agency, a site owner, or a web developer, CheckView gives you peace of mind that your website's doing what it's supposed to be doing all the time. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, stick around and let's take a deeper dive into what CheckView is and how it can help you test and monitor your WordPress site. All right, to kick things off, we've got a special demo set up. This is based on Mandy. Mandy owns Mandy's Critter Kingdom, which is an online pet shop. Lately, she's been having issues with her WordPress forms and Woo checkout breaking. She's heard customer complaints. She thinks she's got it fixed, but she really wants something that will allow her to sleep well at night knowing that the forms are being tested every day. So with that, she wants to give CheckView a try. So we've got her site up here. If you're curious, this is built with Cadence and Cadence blocks, but you can really use any theme, any builder with CheckView. Furthermore, as I mentioned, she's using WooCommerce. For forms, she's using Gravity Forms, but also you can use with CheckView several others, such as Formidable Forms, Fluent Forms. You can see the full list on our site. We've got this all ready to go, and if I go into CheckView, we've already created an account for her. We're logged into her account. We haven't connected any websites. With CheckView, you can add as many websites as you want. You're only limited by the number of monthly tests that are ran. So you can see we have a couple in here because we've just been testing this demo out. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and connect the website using the WordPress Helper plugin, which is available for free in the WordPress repo. I've already installed the plugin here, so we're good to go. And I'm gonna go ahead and connect the website. So I'm just gonna go ahead and paste that in there, hit add site. It's gonna quickly connect to the SaaS, and there we go, it's connected. I can basically add test flows. Now you might be wondering, what is a test flow? A test flow is essentially just the series of steps that make up a test that a real browser is gonna run to confirm your functionality is working. So for example, a test flow could be contact us form on a specific URL. It could also be WooCommerce checkout. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by creating a contact form test, since she was having some issues with her contact form. If I click on contact, I can see she has a pretty robust Gravity form. We will wanna go ahead and get this added. Now, what's really neat about CheckView and what makes it really different than every other automated testing platform out there, including other low code or no code ones, is you don't typically have to define each and every step if it's like a basic Gravity form using standard fields. So essentially, these are some of the fields that we support. So CheckView will actually be able to go to the site and create the steps for you because it knows all about Gravity forms and it's learned a little bit about your website. Now, it doesn't support every type of form field right now, but that's obviously something that we plan to increase support for. So I'm gonna go ahead and click Add Test Flow. Now, when I do that, it's gonna pull up essentially any forms it detects on my site. In addition, if it detects WooCommerce, so in this case, it's just detected Gravity forms, so it's gonna show the Gravity form icon. It also has WooCommerce we're gonna go over later and start from scratch, which is where you can create a custom one. If I click on Gravity Forms, I've got some options right off the bat. I can disable pop-ups, modals, and banners. Typically, we disable all of these by default because we don't want them getting in the way of the test running. Let's say you have a sales pop-up or something like that. But you may want to disable this if your form is actually in a modal or if consent is required, for example, with the cookie policy in order to submit a form. We're going to leave that enabled for now so that pop-ups are removed from the site. One of the steps is it asserts was an email received after a form submission went in. So if you are using form notification emails, you may want to keep this checked. It's a very baseline test. It's not going to check to see the specific information in that email. It's also not going to even check every email. It's really just saying, does CheckView get any emails from your form submission? In this case, uncheck this, but you could leave it checked if you were using form notifications. And then it will show all the forms that you can find on the website related to Gravity Forms. We just have one, but it will list them all out. It will also attempt to find all the URLs where a form is being used. If you're using a very common builder or block-based builder, it likely will find the URLs. If it doesn't, you can always use a custom URL. But I'm gonna go ahead and pick the contact because we know that's the one we wanna test. And you can decide how often you want it to run, daily or weekly. If it's a super critical form, you may want to do it daily. Otherwise, you may want to do it weekly if you want to keep your costs down, since you do have a limit on tests. So I'm going to say 9 a.m. daily Eastern Standard Time. And one other thing to note is that if this form is integrating in with, let's say, Zapier or a CRM or something, that is going to get triggered. And there may be a way within the CRM you can stop the CheckView emails from being added. We do use the checkview.io domain for every test email that's submitted, but it is a different email every time, but it will always have checkview.io as the domain. So oftentimes you can set up a custom rule, for example, in Zapier, where it will not include that in the automation. Go ahead and say add test flow. So now what it's doing is it's basically going through and looking at the website, looking at all the Gravity Form fields, and it's actually putting together all the steps for you so you don't have to. In a standard no code or custom coded steps, you would have to write out all those steps or use something like a Chrome extension to record all the steps on every single site, on every single form. And that's really, like I said, what's different with our solution is CheckView is going to try to reduce that effort as much as possible. It won't necessarily always be able to get it 100%, and you still sometimes have to modify the steps. But the goal is that on your standard contact form or standard WooCommerce, it should be able to run through those without any issues. Right now it's running the preview test. It's actually going through and making sure that the steps it's created are actually working, and it will confirm that those go through. And if for some reason it fails, it will throw an initialization error, and it will actually allow you to see the video. It will be able to show you an error so you can figure out possibly where things went wrong. All right, so now when I look at it, I can see it's pending scheduled run, which means that it was successful and it's waiting for its first run, which would be tomorrow at 9 a.m. Now, if I go into the settings on this test flow, you can see you can do things like adjust the name of it, change the URL, adjust if you actually want pop-ups. You can rebuild it if you've changed things or pause it. You can change the schedule. You can change if you receive notifications or maybe you want the notifications to go to someone else. Let's say a client, you could. And then probably the most important section is the steps. So this is the test step editor. It shows every step that CheckView has created for you automatically. And it's going to use these every single time so that it's a reliable test. Now, without going too far into the step editor, you can see you can drag and drop, you can adjust the order, and each step has an action you can take, such as going to a specific URL, inserting a certain value, pausing. You can adjust, assertions like, is the form submitted? You can check boxes, all sorts of things. So in this case, just to give a quick example, you can see it says go to URL, and it's actually using the test flow variable for essentially this page where we're supposed to run the test based on the settings. Once it gets there, it's assigning to the first input value the test first name, which is the first name field. You can use custom selectors or you can use predefined options. Most of these are for WooCommerce, but they essentially allow you to quickly select without having to use CSS. And then if I go down a little bit, you can see that it will submit the form, and then it has an assertion that the form was submitted. So we'll actually check to make sure the form is submitted properly. So now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna run a quick manual test, and this will count towards my test values. but this way we actually know it's working. And this will take a couple minutes to run typically. Once it actually initiates the run, which takes about a minute, it's gonna show us step-by-step what's going on in this test, and it will record a screenshot, and it will record a video, it will record the console logs if there's anything in there, and the network logs. The end goal being that if it hits an error, essentially you have something to work with. So you can see in real time, it's actually going through each step. You'll notice with the email here, as I mentioned, it generates a test ID at this CheckView address. So if you ever need to whitelist that, you can. And it's gonna work through all these different forms. So you can see we had drop downs, we had email fields, phone fields, address fields, country fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, website fields, paragraph fields, consent fields. So it covers quite a bit. On our site, we have a full list of all the form fields we support out of the box. So it's almost done. It's almost through the test. You can see it goes pretty quickly. And again, the end goal is once you set this up, hopefully you're really only coming in here when you get an alert via email that something's going on, or you come check the dashboard. So now if I look, I can see all of these were marked green. It checked the submission, which means it looked in the database. It actually confirmed with Gravity Forms in the database tables that it's all good and there weren't any issues. And one nice thing is once it does that, it deletes this data, so your customer never gets an email, you never get an email, and it doesn't show up in the Gravity Form submissions table. I can see it created a nice video, and I can see it will fill out all these fields. And if I click on a certain step, I can see the screenshot. I can see if there's any console logs related. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. So you can see, and you can actually download those responses. So if you're having issues, you can use that. So now we're gonna move on to a different test flow for WooCommerce. So I'm gonna go ahead and click Add Test Flow again, but this time I'm gonna pick WooCommerce. So the first option is I need to decide if I'm going to test my product or the CheckView testing product. The CheckView testing product is a simple product. It's hidden for $1. It's in your WooCommerce store, and it will regenerate itself, but essentially it's just a hidden product. Now you may say, I wanna test a real product, which you can. Keep in mind, this is limited to simple products, variations, and some pretty basic configurables. If you've got a really complex product with a lot of third-party add-ons, you might have to stick with the CheckView simple product. But I'm gonna go ahead and pick this Everest series. You can decide if you want it to be full checkout or just add to cart. Most of the time, full checkout is recommended, but if your payment gateway isn't supported, then add to cart might be the best option, so at least something's being checked. The payment method right now is limited to CheckView. It allows us to get through checkout. You can also use Stripe instead. If you're using Stripe, we'll actually put your Stripe into test mode if you add the keys in WooCommerce, and we can test that way. We have more plans to add PayPal and others in the future. You still have the options to disable pop-ups, modals, banners, and similar to forms, you can have an assertion where we receive an email and at least confirm your SMTP is working. So I'm gonna disable that for now because the site doesn't have it set up. And I'm gonna leave it to 9 a.m. daily, just like we did before. You'll notice I can adjust the testing billing details and the shipping and the order notes. These are coming from that organization setting under variables, so you can adjust these. By default, it does use a real address in North Carolina in the US, so that it will pass typically shipping, assuming that you ship to North Carolina in the United States. Similar to forms, just keep in mind if you have this hooked into a CRM or a shipping software, it is going to go to something like ShipStation unless you set up an exclusion rule in ShipStation, which typically you could do, again, just using the email that gets submitted, which would have checkview.io in it. So I'm gonna go ahead and say add test flow. And similar to the forms, it's now going to go through my website, find all my WooCommerce fields, and it's gonna build a custom step setup for me, and if I need to adjust them afterward, I can. All right, good news. It went ahead and finished processing the WooCommerce full checkout test flow. Now if I go to the test step editor, you can see it's gonna be similar to the test flow editor for forms, but it's going to use more of these pre-built assertions like click on the add to cart button. it's going to go ahead and do things like assert that the element contains the cart. So it actually checks to see if the cart has the item that we added to the cart. It's going to, of course, add all the shipping details, all the billing details. And then if I go down all the way to the bottom, you can see it will actually select the CheckView payment method. Since that's the one I selected, it will place the order and it will actually check in the database with Woo via the Woo API to make sure that order's actually in there before we remove it. So everything looks good on this end. So now we're going to go ahead and run a test. It's scheduled to run every day at 9 a.m. But just so we can actually see what's going on here, we're going to go ahead and set up a manual test and initialize it. And one thing that I will mention while this is running is that you can see that reCAPTCHA is actually enabled on this site. The good thing with CheckView is that we have built in a lot of bypasses on the reCAPTCHAs, things like Cloudflare Turnstile for forms in Woo Checkout, which is something you typically can't find in most automated testing platforms. So now I'm just gonna move back over to the form. I can see at checkout, it's gone ahead and added the item to the cart. It's giving it 10 seconds before it continues. It's making sure the items again are in the cart. And now it's actually gonna go to checkout. All right, and it looks like it went ahead and used the CheckView payment gateway. It went ahead and submitted that order. And now it's just making sure that the order was properly placed before it actually removes it from the database. So real quick, if I go over to Woo, you can see there is that order right there that just got submitted. So it is there for, the time being. This is just while it's working through the order. And once it clears itself, you can see it deletes it out of the order screen. If I go to the email for Mandy's, I'm just using this burner email. You can see the test submissions that have gone in here. You'll see some previous ones as well, but you'll notice there's no orders because we've, again, redirected those emails to us to confirm. So they're not gonna go to the admin or anyone to process. It's definitely not gonna go to a customer. All right, there we go. So now it says it's passed, so we're good with that. And you can see that it's going to generate again that screenshot. If there is any JavaScript, it will show that as well. And then it also has the video. So if I quickly just briefly look at that video without taking too much time, you can see it adds it to the cart. It goes to the cart. It's going to my checkout here. It's filling all this in. And this is just using the default Woo checkout, both classic or block-based. It can do either. And it's gonna go ahead and submit that with the CheckView payment gateway, and it submits it. So it looks like everything worked there. And if I go back to my test flow, I can see that test run. And if I go back to the website, I can see those two running. It's all operational because both of them passed. Thanks for sticking around and checking out the demo of CheckView. As you've seen, CheckView allows you to run real tests on your business critical functions, ensuring that you're not losing money or damaging your reputation from a broken website. With real-time alerts and easy test flows, you can actually run automated testing now quickly and easily with WordPress. If you want to avoid costly downtime or errors, go ahead and sign up for a free trial or contact us today for a personalized demo. Thanks so much for watching, and catch you in the next video.